Episode 2, Setting the Stage. Once upon a time. The conference room buzzed with the low hum of side conversations, the kind of chatter that happened when sellers gathered before a team meeting. Matthew walked in, a tablet tucked under his arm, his expression calm but deliberate. He wasn't the loudest or the flashiest person in the room, but when he spoke, people listened. "All right, settle in," said Ben Caldwell, their manager, clapping his hands to bring the team to order. "We've been seeing some challenges across the board: stalled deals, pricing pressures, and difficulty connecting with decision makers. So today I asked Matthew to share his approach. He's been crushing it lately, and frankly, we could all use some of his insights." Matthew smirked slightly, acknowledging the praise with a tilt of his head, but said nothing. He waited for the room to quiet before stepping to the front. The eyes of his colleagues, some curious, some skeptical, followed him. Chapter 2. Setting the Stage. Matthew set his tablet on the table and folded his hands in front of him. "We all know the challenges, right? It's the same story on repeat." He began to tick off points on his fingers. "You're fighting to get meetings with the people who actually make the decisions. You're stuck in endless negotiations with middle managers who don't have the authority to move forward. When you finally get to the table, it's all about pricing. And if you do close the deal, you spend the next year trying to prove it was worth it, hoping for a renewal." The room was silent. He had nailed their struggles, and everyone knew it. "But here's the thing," Matthew continued. "These aren't just our problems. They're the buyer's problems, too." A murmur swept through the room, a few heads nodding. They don't have time for endless product conversations. They're skeptical of generic ROI calculators. They're under pressure to justify every dollar to their teams and their boards. And let's not forget, most of them aren't sitting on piles of extra budget. They need to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that what we're offering is worth it. Matthew paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Then he tapped his tablet, projecting a simple diagram onto the screen behind him. Two overlapping circles labeled buyer and seller. "This," he said, pointing to the overlap, "is where a good custom value model changes the game." Chapter 3. The Key to Success. Solving problems for both sides. Matthew turned to face his colleagues, his tone measured but firm. "A good custom value model doesn't just help us. It helps them. It solves their problems while addressing ours." He gestured to the screen where the words access, alignment, justification, and realization appeared beneath the circles. "Here's how it works," he said. "A good model gives us access to economic buyers by showing them numbers that actually matter, clear, concise, and impossible to ignore. It aligns multiple stakeholders by addressing each of their unique priorities. It provides justification, eliminating pricing objections by focusing on outcomes instead of costs. And it drives value realization, helping buyers see the value of their investments over time." Chapter 4. The 5 Attributes of a Winning Value Model. Matthew tapped the screen again, bringing up a new slide. "But not all models are created equal," he said. "The ones that win deals have 5 key attributes. Let me walk you through them. First, transparent. The numbers need to be clear, concise, and easy to digest. Decision makers should be able to look at the model and understand its value in seconds. Second, transferable. The model has to live beyond us. It should be easy for the buyer to share it with their teams, their CFO, and anyone else involved in the decision. 3. Customizable. Buyers need to feel like the model reflects their reality. That means they should be able to adjust assumptions, tweak data, and see how it aligns with their specific goals. 4. Defendable. A model that falls apart under scrutiny won't get you far. It needs to stand up to tough questions from CFOs, boards, and anyone else who challenges its credibility. 5. Auditable. Finally, the model should allow buyers to track their progress post-sale, comparing projected benefits to realized value. That's how you build trust and renewals. Chapter 5. A Quiet Revelation. Matthew looked out at the room, scanning the faces of his colleagues. Some were furiously taking notes. Others were leaning back, their expressions thoughtful. One or two were nodding as if seeing their challenges in a new light. "Now," he said, his voice softening, "I'm not saying this is easy. Building a model like this takes effort. It takes time. But if you want to win, really win, this is where you start." Rebecca, one of his closest colleagues, raised her hand. "But how are you doing it, Matt? You've been closing deals left and right. Are you building these models from scratch?" Matthew hesitated, his mind racing. He couldn't tell them about Value Seller. Not yet. "I've got a streamlined process," he said carefully. "I focus on the buyer's data, their priorities, and their outcomes. And I make sure everything I present is clear, concise, and actionable." Rebecca nodded, her curiosity clearly piqued, but she didn't press further. Chapter 6. The Ripple Effect. Over the next few weeks, Matthew's insights began to take root. His colleagues started experimenting with more tailored value propositions, shifting their focus from features to outcomes. Deals that had been stalled began to move forward, and sellers who had been stuck in endless pricing battles found themselves having value-based conversations instead. Matthew watched it all with a quiet satisfaction. He wasn't just closing deals anymore. He was changing the way his team approached selling. And while his secret weapon, Value Seller, remained hidden, he knew the day might come when he would share it with those who were ready. And so, Matthew's influence grew. He wasn't just a top performer. He was a mentor, a strategist, and a leader. And while the full story of his journey was still unfolding, one thing was clear. The way forward wasn't about selling harder. It was about showing measurable value. And so, the story continued.